Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Choosing Hope 2 webinar series. I'm Lisa Green. I'm a program coordinator at the Western New York Rural Area Health Education Center. And this is our fourth and final session in this addiction and recovery focus series. And I just wanted to thank everyone very much for joining us, not only today, but on these past Tuesdays in March. It's been a great experience. Just a few things to share. So as always, the chat box is open for introductions and questions, comments. I know that our presenter, Catherine, loves to have questions and comments during the presentation, and I'll try to catch everyone and let her know what people's thoughts are. Don't forget to complete the evaluation at the end of the session. It's available at this link, and that link will be sent to you tomorrow as well. And if you have any questions for me or for Catherine, I can get in touch with her for you. You can use my email, lgreen@r-ahec.org, or anything you'd like to communicate to me. So this session is self-care and mental health connections to addiction and recovery. Let's talk about our presenter a little bit. Catherine Cook-Cottone, PhD, is a professor at the University of Buffalo, specializing in embodied self-regulation and psychosocial disorders. She researches trauma-informed mindfulness and yoga curricula and is founder and president of Yogis in Service. In 2019, she received the American Psychological Association's Presidential Citation for services. She is co-editor-in-chief of Eating Disorders, the Journal of Treatment and Prevention, and has written 8 books and over 75 peer-reviewed articles and book chapters. She has served as a research and mindfulness consultant for the Recon and Sniper Foundation, the United Nations Foundation, and the Africa Yoga Project. So welcome, Catherine. So nice to have you here today.
Happy to be here.
I will turn it over to you.
All right, great. You share screen. Here we go. I'll just get started. So we'll be looking at mindful self-care as a pathway to positive embodiment within the context of substance use and recovery. So I'll look at the underlying theory and science related to mindfulness and the treatment of substance use, mindfulness and mindful self-care, and then how to implement mindful self-care. So I want to begin by emphasizing the importance of grounding and breathing and what it can do for our nervous system. And there's no better way to emphasize something than to practice it. So where you're seated, if your legs are crossed, uncross your legs and press both your feet into the floor, and then press your sitting bones into your chair or the foundation upon which you sit. As you press down, lift up through your core, maybe even drawing your navel in and up, so that the foundation that you're pressing into is helping to support and lift you up, engaging the core, and then reaching to the crown of your head. Here, soften your shoulders and maybe soften or close your eyes. And with this foundation, with the strength of your core lifting you up, the softness of your shoulders, take a deep breath in for 4 counts. For 1, 2, 3, 4, and an exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, and an exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And one more round, inhaling for 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhaling for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Good. And then if your eyes were closed, slowly open them and then reorient yourself back to something here. So maybe this beautiful strongly rooted tree and your screen, and then just begin to breathe normally. And you might notice just the simple practice that takes, under a minute, and how that can shift your physiological experience, down regulating you. So I kind of call this breathing with, and it's a very powerful thing to do. And you can do it as you work with your clients or patients. We just had it in our yoga teacher training. This weekend, we had someone come onto the training. We're doing it through our computers, through telehealth. And one of our participants came on, and she had a sudden death in the family and decided to come to training anyways, and told the whole group this had happened. And so I said, let's put a hand on our heart, a hand on our belly, and we're going to breathe with our friend. I said her name, and we took 3 or 4 deep breaths together. And just doing that very caring, collective breathing gave her the opportunity to self-regulate, and everyone else as well. And then it also honored the death of her loved one without any words really being necessary. So it's breathe with, but we can think of these activities as being with kinds of interventions. So identifying the problem, we are working toward a more holistic and embodied way of being, and thinking of substance use disorders as disorders of embodiment. So further defining the problem, and I'm sure you guys who are working in the field are well aware of this, but just to put it out there, that we're talking about substance-related disorders, in particular the use of substances, and then the substance use disorder. And that's when we're abusing or becoming dependent on a drug. And what I put in italics is the important one, right? That the individual continues using the substance despite significant problems. So the use becomes more important than the havoc that it's wreaking in a person's life. And then I have this slide that comes from Michael Bozarth, who's a professor who specializes in understanding substance use at the University of Buffalo. And he has a motivational toxicity theory. As we initially begin engagement with the drugs, the circumstances, we might do experimental drug use, or we might hurt our knee playing lacrosse or even doing yoga, right? And we are prescribed painkillers. This circumstantial use can sometimes evolve into this casual use that moves into more intensive use, and then into compulsive use, and then into addiction. And as this happens, the motivational strength of the person to use the substance increases over time. And so as the strength of the compulsion to use the substance increases, the motivation to do other things decreases. And then we get to where we have, Bozarth calls motivational toxicity. And that's when the motivation to use the drug, secure the drug, becomes more important than parenting, than eating, than sex, than the other things that typically motivate human beings. And this whole body problem, right, ends up having this very substantial impact. This number is an estimate, I think, from 2019, $578 billion impact yearly. And it covers health, productivity, the crime, law enforcement, research and development, fires, public assistance and social services, even traffic collisions end up being part of the cost. So we want to look toward, okay, as the kind of thinking this person has become singularly focused on securing the substance, and the motivation has become toxic for them to do this. How do we orient people back, or include an orientation back to their whole selves when we're working toward their recovery? And so this model suggests that we begin this right away, like first session, even as we're looking at intake, getting the client or patient thinking about their whole selves in terms of nourishing and nurturing the healthy self, the non-addictive self, the sober self. So this would include attention to their bodies, They're nurturing and supporting their emotional well-being. Of course, thoughts, and we know this through CBT, cognitive behavior approaches, that these are very important, right? Managing their thoughts around the drinking. Learning new ways of being while I'm interacting with my family, while I'm living in my community, and how I negotiate the challenges in my culture and the larger systems that I'm trying to negotiate. And that can include the treatment culture, the treatment system, all of that. This is my favorite picture. I try to use this whenever I can. This is embodiment here, right? We want to be this little girl in the rain, loving life sober. So I'm not in front of my body, right? I am my body. I'm not even just in it. Like, this is me. And we want to be able to laugh and scream and play in the rain without substances. It's this really sober and joyful way of being. So thinking of embodiment, it's a way of being in which being is understood as residing in and manifesting from your whole body as you experience your internal world. And that's the part of the model, the physiology, your emotions, your thoughts, and your external world. And this part's really important here, the existential dimensions of life. And these are things like our reason for being, when we think more broadly, but also our simple whys, like for my children, right? Or for my sister, or in honor of my father, right? So to be embodied is negotiating these aspects of self. When we don't have tools for nurturing and nourishing our inner world, this is when we have a loss of the embodied self. We perhaps become focused on maybe managing things in our lives. I think about when people slip up or move into the addiction pathway, when it starts to become more compulsive. And the load of bearing this external world often becomes too much, whether it's for kids in school, negotiating sports, relationships, challenges, peer pressures, whether it's a family member overly burdened with caretaking, all of a sudden having another drink or taking the pill as a way to keep managing this, losing a sense of who we are, right? Losing a sense of what our body really needs or what's going on emotionally, or even a rational kind of way of being. We've lost this. And here the addiction has a way of creeping in, and we end up ultimately the false self, the addicted self, presenting a fake presence, trying to kind of mask what's going on inside to all those in our world. We often lie, we often misrepresent, we underreport, we try to make it look better than it is, while inside we have this pathological relationship with the substance, rather than relationships with others that are real and meaningful and nourishing, right? So this boundaryless pathological involvement here. And so no one ends up really knowing who we are when we're addicted, right? They know the false self that we're propping up to hide the addiction. So part of treatment involves really getting back to the embodied self that doesn't leave the addiction room to creep in and wedge between us and our relationships. One of my favorite books, if you haven't read it, I'm sorry, my images isn't clear. I lifted that from the internet. But this is his book, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. And Gabriel Maté is a addiction specialist who works in Vancouver. And each chapter of that book, which is quite a read, talks about, and this is Close Encounters with Addictions. He not only talks about different patients he works with in his, it's a harm reduction clinic, and I think they do Suboxone and methadone and treat addicts. I think many of them are homeless. Each chapter talks about different people he's worked with, but then as he does that, he interweaves his own addiction to buying expensive classic jazz albums, and how all of us can have this tendency toward addiction. A really beautiful book. And in that book, this hungry ghost, this is something, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot I added this slide. so a sense, I wanted you to sense of the book, a sense of deficient emptiness pervades our entire culture. The drug addict is more painfully conscious of this void than most people and has limited means of escaping it. The rest of us find other ways of suppressing our fear of emptiness or of distracting ourselves from it. So for him, it's this like jazz thing. And it's a cool book because he talks about even not parenting as well as he could because he was off getting a jazz album at some, far off store. Okay, so this book comes from actually Eastern thinking or Buddhist thinking. And in their culture, in this, the Buddhist philosophy, there's this concept of the hungry ghost. And the hungry ghost is the disembodied. And so this is what he's named his book after, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. The hungry ghost tries to consume things that will never make them full. And it's like thinking that you're going to drink your problems away, and they don't go away from drinking, because not having enough alcohol wasn't your problem, right? Maybe the problem was marital distress. Maybe the problem was chronic depression, and alcohol is a treatment for neither, right? So what happens is the substance is used, the opiate is used, whatever the substances of choice is used in attempt to maybe fill the hole. And because it doesn't fill the hole, we're left perpetually hungry. And in this philosophy, these ghosts walk around, they have these big bellies, these they're not fed or nourished, and they're filling their bellies with something that will never truly fill the hole, fill the void. So I really love the concept of the hungry ghost, and we can all watch ourselves from when we're doing that, when we're feeding the hungry ghost. So here I have a breathe with, because that's an intense thing to think about. So if you'd like, just placing your hands on your chest and taking a deep breath in. And a big exhale. And a deep breath in. And an exhale. Yeah. This is weaving self-regulating into the whole presentation. So this is here's some more. This comes from Timothy's Sketchpad at Blogspot. Really cool drawings of the hungry ghosts. So let's think about it this way. Think about our culture. So we have this concept of materialism. And in our culture, we think, right, that someone outside of me will make me feel better, right? So this is what I need. And then this is who I am. I'm a thinking self. I have thoughts, I assess, I judge, I have a rationale or a rationalization. I have my stories. And my stories might mean, oh, I just need this and then it'll get better. And then if I just get this and then it'll get better and this get better. And this doesn't feed us, right? And substances can kind of fill that hole too. Like I'm gonna, as soon as I get X, Y, Z, as soon as this is right. And the thing is that life is just not this way. It's a series of challenges and resolutions and challenges and resolutions. And here we are as those challenges and resolutions arise and pass. Yeah. I had toddler children and tried to work. That was a lot. And we sorted it out and it passed. And then I had teenagers and then sorted out. Then I'm trying to put kids through college, right? We have people pass and we grieve and it passes. So life is filled with all these challenges and resolutions. And I don't think, although I would love to know if having a Jaguar would make that all better. And I don't mean the animal, I mean the car. But it wouldn't. A Jaguar doesn't save us from grief or the challenges of toddlers, right? Or chronic depression. It doesn't fit that way. So Michael Stone, he was actually I guess I would call him a philosopher, but he practiced mindfulness in Toronto, and he ultimately died of a drug overdose, unfortunately, and he had bipolar disorder. And he has a TED Talk called A Deeper Materialism. And so it inspired in part this slide. And this slide is an extension of that some thinking that I've been doing. So we have this, what he says is we're not materialistic enough. And so let's think about that. what we really need, right, is experiences in our own body, sober experiences in our own body, really nourishing and supportive and reciprocal relationship with our own body as our heart beats and we breathe, as we get excited, as we get scared, right? As we work towards something. And then we learn how to get thirsty and drink water, how to work hard and then take a rest, how to put ourselves all in a relationship in love, and then also give each other enough space to breathe. Right? That we get really good at being in and of these bodies and in the relationships we have right here in the here and now. So that these are material experiences. These are right here, right now, flesh, blood, bone experiences, and not a jaguar, a kind of outside materialism, but me and my life and my body right here and now. This is embodiment. And that who I am is this mindful self, the one who can see, the one who notices, the one who's being, and the one who's experiencing all these things. And this embodiment is just a different way. It's actually a deeper, more connected way of being in your life that is a bit free from the notion that something outside of me will make me feel better. It's actually my own embodied experiences. And I think of, we just watched a recovery movie last night with my family, but every recovery movie, every one of my patients I've seen recover, when they find this is more, right, what I'm looking for, and the substance keeps me from it, like I can't do this noticing when I'm high. I can't feel love when I'm stoned, right? That recovery means like getting really competent at being right here. And I'm sure all of you have heard, there's a cool TED Talk, and I just want to bring your awareness to it, but the opposite of addiction is connection, right? So it's sobriety, yes, but sobriety gives us space for connection. And so this is in Psychology Today, and I'm sure you guys will have access to these slides so that you can pull this up. But these new discoveries, so this gets to a study of the rat park, and also you want to check this out. It's all the rat park is spelled out in a comic book, so it's cool to share with your patients or clients. But the idea was that they had rats put in simple cages, and they could drink water, or that was just water, or water that had an opiate in it. And they just had the cages. And so the researcher was like wondering, when you're just in a cage all by yourself and you have these two choices, maybe you pick the heroin over the water because that's all there is. But what if I gave the rats these beautiful cages with lots of fun things to do and people to hang out with and challenges to have and experiences? And what they found is that the rats were less likely to become addicted. And I think it was like very substantially less likely to become addicted in this enhanced park. But what I would assert is they're getting back to like getting to able to live in that other artificial cage took away their chance to have an embodied life. One of my favorite poems from Rumi, this is how a human being can change. There's a worm addicted to eating grape leaves, and suddenly he wakes up, like call it grace, whatever, something wakes him, and he's no longer a worm. He's the entire vineyard and the orchard too, the fruit, the trunks, a growing wisdom and joy that doesn't need to devour. And so here we have the antidote to the hungry ghost, right? This sensational relationship with your life. So this is the model I present in my most recent book, where we're looking at how do I develop positive embodiment and how do I help? Well, I'm always thinking like, of course, me, because I am the interventionist, the therapist, and I should be up to the stuff I expect my patients to be up to. But how can we, right, including our patients, including you guys, be up to building positive embodiment in our lives, right? Creating our own rat park, so to speak, that is this full life that we can live in. And so there's 4 aspects to that. One of them is mindful self-care, I'll emphasize today. 2 is the be with and work with skills. Like how in the present moment, when something difficult comes up, how do I have the skills to ground my feet and breathe and be with it? Do I have the tools for managing difficult emotions? Do I know how to have hard conversations? Do I know how to problem solve? Do I know how to manage a craving when it comes upon me? And then here over time, right, I have a sense of purpose and mission in my life. I have a reason, like why not to drink, why not to use, why go for the walk, why go for the run, why go to the yoga class, why? Besides just being healthy, because that just isn't going to cut it, right? But if it's for my grandkids, if it's for my daughter, if it's for, I'm going to help develop this, further develop this addiction program, I'm committing myself to the church. Like if there's a why, that can help me, right? As I'm moving forward in time, giving me direction. Like, what am I up to? And then in the past, when we turn around sometimes and look backward, or the past kind of crawls up and tries to grab our ankles and drag us back, we honor the effort and the struggle that we've been through. And we have tools for that. So those are the 4 kind of pillars of developing positive embodiment. And as we look up here, these top 2 give us some structure. Like this morning, I practiced yoga because I scheduled it. So in the present moment at 6 a.m., I was doing yoga, and it just I didn't fall from the sky into a yoga class. Right? I I was there because I signed up. I actually did yoga because I was teaching it, and I actually do yoga teaching so that it's built into my life to do these healthy things. Yeah. And then my mission and purpose is bringing me here in this moment, right? To share these tools so that fewer people struggle with addiction, fewer people. I mean, we lost my husband's brother and his girlfriend to addiction in November. They both overdosed. So this is something that's close to me and I'm very passionate about. So it brings me here. So number 1, mindful self-care. So it's building this in from day 1. And with my patients, I explore their self-care practice from intake going forward. So this really helps us think, what am I doing to nourish the parts of my body that aren't that addicted part, that aren't the symptomatic part? What do I do to build that part of me up? So this whole mindful self-care practice starts with mindfulness. Here's the Mindful UK report definition. So this is a paying attention to what's happening in the present moment, mind, body, and external. So you see how it fits the model. With an attitude of curiosity or kindness, with an attitude of, right? Just, And then you can teach this to your clients, your patients, just that wondering. So not judgment, not accusation, but like, I wonder what's going on there. I wonder how that feels in your body. I wonder how that is landing for you, right? Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves. Live the questions now, and perhaps you will gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. And so with all of my patients, I work toward them asking questions for a while, like not needing to know all the answers. How am I going to figure out my sobriety? Let's live that question. One day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. That's an amazing question. How are you going to, right? And let's figure that out. And I could say, well, here's the tools, but what if we lived that question together, right? And here's a tool or 2. And then the loving kindness is really critical. So from Sharon Salzberg, mindfulness expert, with mindfulness, loving kindness, and self-compassion, we can let go of expectations about how life and those we love should be. And I find with so many of my patients that struggle with addiction that it gets like, because the should be's and the perfectionism and the like feeling I need to be here somewhere else shuts me down from self-acceptance of the moment and feeds the addiction. So really loving kindness for exactly where I am right here, right now. And this is the kind of framework for self-care. Because no matter the challenges we confront, there's no escaping this reality. No matter what others or we try to say about it, if we don't care for ourselves, will be limited in how we care for others. It is that simple and that important for you, for others, and for our planet. And I just quoting Dan Siegel, because he's amazing. Some of you may know him, but really powerful in human change and interpersonal relationships. So we assess in a kind and caring way how we're doing. So on my webpage, there's 3 different versions of this scale, as well as a link that'll give you feedback in your email. These are all, everything's free. And it's just free, open access, because we think this is important. So you can print out self-care scales. There's a long clinical version that's 84 items where you can really go through patients, and all of the items you'll see are actionable. You take it and evaluate where their self-care is, and then you get to set goals and how can I build up different areas. And then there's a 33 item version and a 28 item that are more used for research. So what do they look like? We have physical care, simple physical care, self-compassion and purpose, integrated practices like mindful awareness and relaxation, and then supportive relationships. So actually looking with your clients, like what relationships do I have that support the sober me, that support the healthy me, that listen when I say no, right? What structures do I have in place that help me be sober, that help me have ease throughout my day? And then how can I increase those? This scale has what we call formal and informal practices. We've studied this with many different groups. And I'll give you a really two tough groups that we've studied this with. One of them is hospice workers, and another is medical residents. And even they've used this scale with the medical residents at the Mayo Clinic. We studied it with the university student medical residents at University of Buffalo. These groups that are very busy caring for others, as many of us are right now in the pandemic, we're able to engage more in informal practices. And you might think, what are those? Those are the ones that I can weave in throughout my day, and I don't have to take an hour to go to the gym or to a yoga class or necessarily sit for meditation. But let's say that between patients, I can say a loving kindness meditation as I wash my hands for the patient that I just saw, right? That I can do some deep breathing during the time that I wash my hands to downregulate myself for the next patient. So these are the practices that I can weave in throughout my day that don't take dedicated time. And then formal practices are also important because they give us an opportunity to practice being with ourselves and getting to know ourselves. And those are ones where you actually take dedicated time, like planning out all your meals for the week, right? Informal practice, mindful eating. Formal practice, planning out all my meals. So it has both. And actually, we're going to study more how those interact with our different outcomes on the scale. So you take the scale, look how you're doing, set some goals, and then engage in self-care behaviors, and then retake the measure. And it's this iterative process over time. And we're working with an engineering professor. We're hoping to develop an app that can help you do this as well. So here you'd say how much you've done these things in the past days. So here's an example of some items. So really easy. Like I drank easy to say, not easy to do. Anybody who's working on their hydration is probably laughing right now. Carry around your water bottle all day and it's like still half full at the end of the day. So these are easy things in terms of simple things, but not easy to accomplish. But you can see how you can turn them right around into goals. All of these are based on research, also the Center for Disease Control, also the World Health Organization. Yeah, some more. Here's self-compassion and purpose. I'm hoping you're all going to take the scale after this. So I'll go through this kind of quickly, but you can see that you can switch these all into goals, right? Different ways to relax, different ways looking at your schedule, organizing your workspace. How can I make my living environment a little more pleasant and comfortable? Supportive relationships. So I felt I had someone who would listen to me if I became upset. right? We all need someone like that. And so if your patient isn't able to identify someone outside of you, right, we're going to get them to a better or different support group, maybe helping them identify which friends, sober friends they can go to. And then we have general ones, just making sure we're always looking to think of new ways to bring self-care in, that we have a variety, and that we're planning self-care. Those are really important. So another breathe with, so just pausing here. I'm hoping this, if anything, this will give you the idea of how helpful it is to pause and just take some breaths throughout your day. So taking a deep breath in and an exhale. And a deep breath in and an exhale. And one more deep breath in and an exhale. All right, now our next set of tools is be with and work with tools. So you remember the diagram. So we did the self-care up here, and we're going to be down here with the be with, work with, and what to do when something difficult shows up in the present moment. One of the things that tends to show up in the present moment for people struggling with addiction, as well as the rest of us, is emotions. And I love this study by Newman. And there's actually, this whole team has done some really cool things because they developed software that this study comes from. I think they had 700 participants in 5 different conditions across. This is cross-cultural too. This isn't just like a US sample. This is cross-cultural. Identify where they felt different feelings in their bodies. And they might have shown them movie clips or identify an emotion. They encouraged the emotion in the person, and they had to show where they felt the emotion. If there's light color, that this yellow, that's activation. And then blue actually means deactivation. And black is neutral. So this is really fascinating that you can pull this. You just Google right here, this body maps of emotions. This will come right up. Almost everyone I know that I train or now have told us about, you laminate this for your office. It really helps patients identify feelings. One of the biggest drivers for addiction is, trying to negotiate difficult feelings, overwhelming feelings, right? So figuring out where these are in our bodies, being able to label them and identifying them is one of the first steps, right? And then working with our bodies to negotiate what is so hard about a feeling? It's not always the thought part of it, is it? It's how it shows up in our body, and it kind of creates a sense of we have to move or we can't move, or it shuts us down, right? So when we can get familiar with how emotions show up in our body, and then practice tools, movement tools, yoga tools, breathing tools, right? Even drawing art that helps us move and identify and be with these emotions as they are in our bodies. So one tool that I use is grounding emotions. I use this as a therapist as well as a human. But imagining, right, that emotions are coming in, they're grounding through my body and then right through me into the earth. In my private practice, I have chairs that have wooden arms. I have a lot of nature. Even in my house here, I have a lot of natural elements. So I have a sense of releasing the emotions to the ground. So letting emotions, it's energy in motion, letting it move through you, and grounding. So imagine yourself as a lightning rod. When I'm putting things into a file, whether I'm typing them in or writing them in, I'm imagining the same thing. I'm letting the file, the computer, the folder, and the computer be the holder of the emotional content. It doesn't have to reside here in my body. Also, I've worked with patients, and I myself, I have actually a bowl of rocks right here. You can put the memory, the concern, the thing that is heavy on a rock and keep the rocks in a basket, or just symbolize them in this way so that we don't have to hold the emotions all the time. You're probably familiar with this. This is mindfulness-based relapse prevention program. And one of the tools they teach is riding the wave of the emotion. It's like riding the wave of the craving, right? We're not going to try to fight it. We're going to be with it. We're going to watch it arise and pass. And here in this image, don't amplify it. Don't hold on to it. Don't try to keep it around. Not suppressing, not blocking, not pushing, not getting rid. It's as a wave coming and going. You experience your emotion, just letting it move through you. And then each one always arises and passes. Emotions have impermanence. Okay. And then developing inner resources for being with. So I've been cultivating, curating a lot of meditations on the Insight Timer. This link goes to it. And in fact, I often record meditations after I see patients on Friday, and I'll record a meditation that's needed by one or more of my patients that day. But developing the inner resources, and meditation is one of those for being with things. In particular, this meditation, the worry tree, I wrote so that you could put your worries up into the tree and the tree will hold them for you, a lot like the rocks. And then when you're ready for your worries, maybe after you made it through the whole day sober, right? Maybe after you got through the test, maybe after you had that hard conversation, you can come back and take your worries back, but that the tree will hold your worries for you as you need it to. And this, as well as other meditations, are available on the Insight Timer for free. It's an open access free service. And then, of course, I don't know if you would guess it, but I was say yoga. And I love yoga, but any kind of mind-body movement where you're practicing moving, breathing, and being with what shows up in your body can really help you be with and work with the emotions as they're there. All right, our third prong is finding meaning and purpose. And I won't emphasize this as much because there's a lot here. I go through it in my book, but you can find other tools. You don't need to necessarily get my book, but you can find tools for how do I work with meaning and purpose with my patients and with myself, right? How do I write a mission statement that can ACT therapy? They have great tools for figuring out your values and your mission. And then we can say like, oh, in what way does the addiction get us there, right? So creating that dissonance between what I really want and value and what am I doing, right? What am I doing every day? And how does that flesh out? And then honoring effort and struggle. And that is, I think I'm just offering like one tool. Oh, I have two tools, I remember. One of them is self-compassion. I'm going to point you to Kristen Neff and her self-compassion work. And this is really like a powerful way to look at our mistakes, or whatever you want to call them, or the stuff we did that didn't work out, right? Our attempts at survival that maybe got us into bigger trouble. And we look back at those with self-compassion, and she has a whole self-compassion intervention that she does as well. So she has workshops, events, trainings. They have a workbook that she wrote with Gerber. Oh, it's right here. Yeah, the workbook. She also has a really beautiful Soften, Soothe, Allow meditation for working with difficult emotions that is also on Insight Timer, but at her webpage as well. And this is a way to look back at what we've been through and hold it with compassion and honor. And then I'm recently finishing up my EMDR training, which I'm extremely excited about, but making sure that, so long as your patients are stable enough to have them working through the past traumas. And many addictions are paired with trauma. If they weren't traumatized before the addiction, everything that's involved in the addiction can be very traumatizing. So working through and healing past traumas is important. And this is just our fourth prong. And then the last part that I'd like to talk about is you, the mindful treatment provider. So we have to create a sustainable way of being. We have to make sobriety look good and fun and manageable. Like, right, you know, when you're drowning, you look up and you're like, are they okay? Right? Like, I'm not going to grab a hand of somebody who also looks like they're drowning. So how do we as care providers right? Show up in a way that looks like this is a good place to be. First of all, it's an ethic. So this is from John Norcross, but every ethics code, mental health counseling, psychology, all of it, substance use, American Medical Association, have ethical codes toward self-care. We gently urge you to challenge the morality of self-sacrifice at all costs, to consider the indispensability of self-care. And this is the Latin quote, which means you can't give what you don't have. So when we're kind of offering this healing space, the therapeutic conditions, right? If we don't have the thing we're hoping for them, it becomes very difficult to deliver. And I want to put an eye toward burnout too, because this is real. And I know many of us work in underfunded, under-resourced, overbooked conditions. And that is a systemic problem that we all have to fight to change. And in the meantime, protect ourselves. But watching for this, if you're emotionally depleted, you don't feel like you're making a difference anymore, that you show up every day and you sit in the parking lot checking Facebook because you can't stand to go in, right? Like, we have to look at that because we want to think of how am I showing up for my clients? And then how can I talk to my supervisors? How can we work as supervisors for you guys? How can you work with your group to support people, right? And give them space for self-care. And this becomes particularly important right now because of the pandemic. Burnout is at epidemic proportions. And so not only are we, right, dealing with addiction and working in under-resourced, over bogged down systems, but we also, many of us are watching children at home or caring for adults at home while we watch our country go through tremendous social change. We're isolated, at the same time not having any alone time, right? And even me and you right now are going through the filter of technology. So I want to honor all the stress we're going through with that. And so you, as a care provider, become so oriented, taking care of everybody else, that look what happens. Your system here gets in the same risk place as the people that you're caring for. And do you remember what happened for them? The addiction creeped in, right? So it can be the addiction, it can be depression, it can be burnout. But when we become oriented in the same way toward taking care of everyone else, and we don't nurture ourselves, we can put ourselves in the very same place that our clients are in. Our first step is to develop compassion for our own wounds. It's the unconditional compassion for us that leads naturally to unconditional compassion for others. So we have to stand fully in our own shoes and never give up on ourselves. Then we will be able to put ourselves in the shoes of others and never give up on them. So we know this from the research that mindful self-care is protective against stress and distress and burnout. Also reduces substance use, importantly, and then it helps develop compassion, satisfaction. So you remembering your why, right? So these same 4 domains become important to you. Why are you in this work? Like, why are you up to this, right? This gives us energy. And then how can I develop that sense of mission with my own self-care so I don't lose myself in my mission? There's 2 wings of the bird. The one wing is mission, right? That if I only do that, the wing will break. The other wing, self-care, and if I only do that, I fly in a circle. But both my mission and my self-care, and now I have a beautiful blue heron of effectiveness in my life. So you as provider, create your resilience plan. Here's the link. If you Google this, UB Mindful Wellness Assessment, this will come up and this will give you the scale, and this will give you feedback and links to TED Talks and lots of inspirational stuff and your scores on the self-care scale. And you can use this with your patients too. And it's all free. So almost second to last slide. So when you finish your assessment, you choose your 2 lowest domains and you pick 2 items for action, like 1 in each domain. And then you make a daily commitment to connecting to your why, whether that's through journaling or talking or just contemplating while you're walking. And then engage in your self-care practices, making that commitment today. And our final slide. So, and I said to my body softly, I want to be your friend. And it took a deep breath and replied, I've been waiting my whole life for this. So, quick time for questions. And I also have this slide will be here, but they have the books for you and resources. And let's see if I can check the chat. Oh, thank you for the and the quotes. Are there any questions or?
So I definitely need to be sure to pass on your slides because there's so much, you know, not just in the information that you presented, but there's extra resources and things. So I'll be sure to do that in the next couple of days, is to share your information. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We'll be checking on them. And I just wanted to ask you, Catherine, and we probably talked about this before, but I just don't remember. How did you first get into a mindfulness practice?
It was a student of mine in a class. I was teaching counseling with children and adolescents, and the student said everything, like she was a yoga teacher, and she's like, everything that you're talking about is so like yoga philosophy. And she goes, you should come to a yoga class. And I said, no, I'm not very flexible, you know, like that's for, I always thought it was like for the people who were good at dance or took gymnastics, because I just don't have that kind of coordination. And she's like, no, you should come. And it was back in the day here in Buffalo when there was really only the Himalayan Institute. There wasn't really any other studios, a long time ago. And so I went, she taught a class and I went, and I was sold like the first class. I actually had never felt that relaxed without a glass of wine or two in years. Like I was like, oh, my body can do this without a substance, you know? And I think we forget that, like, because substances get paired with weddings and everything, right? And it was like, oh, my body can do this on its own. I don't have to like help
Great point.
Right? So then her and I developed a prevention program for eating disorders. And then I just started it just took off from there, training and learning and studying, and yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Kim says, thanks for your time and information. And I know that's how we all feel. Thank you for taking the time for us this afternoon. And in case you're wondering, Catherine will be with us for our conference on April 29th. If you have no more questions, I will be glad to go on and talk a little bit about the conference on the 29th. George Borrello, who's a New York State Senator, will be our opening speaker. He's talking about addiction resources in Western New York and the Southern Tier. And Catherine will be with us to talk more about what she talked about today. And we have a peer, a SERPA, it's just escaping me, but John Ingersoll will be here with us as a peer to talk about the peer services. And who else do we have coming? We have Callie Lofgren, who's talking about MAT, medication assisted treatment. And it will just be a half day of all addiction and recovery focused information. We're really excited to do it. It's in the arcade area. So if you're interested, please let me know. I'll get you registered and we'll have a great time. But thank you so much for your time today and have a wonderful day, Catherine and everybody else. We'll see you again soon.
Nice to share with you. Have a great day.
You too.